Great to see you here again, another video offered to you by the Custer Academy. And here I'm looking at planning risk management. When we start with risk management, one of the first steps in the risk management process is plan risk management. We have to create the risk management plan. So we will be looking at the tools and the techniques to create the risk management plan. We have an overview of the risk management plan. We look at the risk breakdown structure. We look at the probability and impact matrix with probability and impact scoring. And we look at the probability and impact matrix scoring scheme. So let's have a look. So first of all, we have the tools and the techniques, like I've already mentioned in many cases. We look at expert judgment. People with experience in those matters can be consulted as risk management specialists. People with a lot of experience, people who have been in similar projects, in the same company, from different companies. Basically, you have to understand how the risk management in that environment is in fact managed, what are the common problems that can occur, and so on. We look at data analysis, so very important to analyze the data that we receive. And of course, there are different meetings that we are going to use. Now, after this, at the end of the step of plan risk management, we will have the plan, the risk management plan. And the risk management plan contains a number of items. First of all, we have the risk strategy, which is the general approach to risks on the specific project. Now, you may have general risk strategies for the company, but you have to deduct the elements which are specific for your project. It may be different than the classical approach of the company, but you have to adjust it to this specific project. We have the methodology. We look at what are the approaches, what are the tools and data sources that we will use. We look at roles and responsibilities, who is doing what on the project related to risk. It may be the project manager, but for very large projects, you may have, in fact, a risk manager who will be looking after the risk aspects of the project. We need funding, so we look at contingency reserves. We also may have a look at management reserves, but management reserves are typically for management decisions and not necessarily related to risks. Timing. How will we do the risk management planning? How will we do the risk management processes? We will have to review the plans. We will have to have regular meetings. All is defined here. We look at risk categories. So we create basically a risk breakdown structure in which you can find the different categories that we can identify. We also look at the stakeholder risk appetite. Now we have to see for every organization, we have to understand how the organization and the people from the organization and eventually your sponsors or customers, how they evaluate risks. Are they eager to take risks or are they avoiding risks? When you are looking at your project, how will you measure the risk level of your project? And once you know that, once you define the risk level, you can in fact measure how risky your project basically is. Now we also have to define the risk probability and impact matrix. So we have a table how we link different parameters related to risk and what they represent in the matrix, how we are going to classify the risks. We also look at reporting formats. What formats are we going to use? How are we going to analyze? It's very useful to have the same document so everybody can very quickly find the specific elements that they really need. We also have tracking. We look at the record of risk activities. We have to track and record what's happening, and we also have to use them later for auditing, we have guidelines for auditing, and we have to take them into account. I mentioned the risk breakdown structure, so we're looking at different elements that we can in fact consider as risks, and here I have four items: technical risks, management risk, commercial risks, and external risks. We can define them for our project. So technical, typically we can already put their scope definition, requirements definition, estimates, assumptions and constraints, technical processes, technology, technical interfaces, all the things that we may encounter where we can encounter risks related to technical issues. Management issues, we look at project management, program portfolio management, operations, organization, resourcing, communications, and so on. Commercial risks are also very important. We look at terms and conditions for contracts, internal procedures and procurement, suppliers and vendors, subcontracts, clients, customer stability, partnerships and joint venture. And we also have external elements which relate typically to legislation, exchange rates, site and facilities, environment, weather, competition, regulation. So you can make a list. You already have a number of possibilities here, but you can start finding more specific technical risks. You can have more subcategories here. You can create a risk breakdown structure and a hierarchical overview of the risks in the project, which is comparable with the work breakdown structure. When we look at the probability and impact scoring for the probability and impact matrix, we can say, okay, with probabilities, it's the easiest one. We say we have a very high probability when the probability is more than 85%, high when it's between 65 and 85. There is no problem. Let's say there is no risk when it's smaller than 5%. And we can also put those on project objectives. So we can say, what does it mean? A very high impact on time or on cost and on quality. So all these things can be defined for your project. This is an example. It can be different, but basically it gives you a clear instruction saying what are the impact scores that you can consider, and link it also to the probability. So we have on one side the probability, and on the other side we have the impact on the project objectives, and we have to classify them. Basically, once we identify for every element the probability and the impact, we can create a PIM scoring scheme and a probability and impact matrix scoring scheme. So basically we have the probability on the vertical axis and the impact on the horizontal axis. And we can see we have the different categories here, very low up to very high, opportunities also. And basically we have to see what we do. So we have the white elements, we will accept those elements, we define what we will do depending on the categories. We will monitor them. These are the orange fields that we identified, and we will quantify the red elements. These are really the risks that we are going, or the threats that we are going to evaluate and for which we are going to create plans. The same we can do for the opportunities, but of course we would like to have an opportunity, while a threat we want to avoid. So basically we define here what is the area of this graph, of this matrix, where we will accept what happens with the opportunity. We will select the area in light green where we will monitor the opportunities, and of course we have the dark green where we are going to take measures, we are going to quantify the opportunities, and we are taking measures to make those opportunities happen. So basically this has to be defined in the plan, and based on the elements the scoring, the probability and impact scoring we had, we can now do the impact and the probability scoring for the threats and the opportunities. And for every threat and opportunity, we can place a dot in this matrix. And when those dots are in the red zone for threats, we are going to quantify them. We are developing measures, we are developing plans to avoid the threats, and the same thing on the side of the opportunities. When we are in the dark green zone, we're going to develop plans to make the opportunities happen. The principle here is defined in the project risk management plan, and that's what we're going to use once we go through the risk cycle, the risk process. So that was it for the tools for risk planning, and in the next video we will continue with other items related to risk management. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next video. Bye bye.